After reading what Sox GM Chris Getz specifically demanded from the Cincinnati Reds, I don't blame them for saying no to a Luis Robert Jr. deal, and I'll discuss why on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert at SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show out wherever you get your podcasts. Well, Cincinnati Enquirer Reds beat reporter Gordon Whitmire revealed in more detail some of the prospects Chicago White Sox GM Chris Getz demanded in a deal for Luis Robert Jr. And if he's demanding two or three top three prospects from the team, he might as well just stop shooting his shot. Then a viewer asked an interesting question. If the Dodgers could not develop Miguel Vargas, why do the Sox think they can? And finally, Minor League Monday report. Let's go over four overlooked prospects who could surprisingly make the opening day roster. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, so there are four things I'm convinced about when it comes to Luis Robert Jr. And I know I've shared it many times, but number one, the front office does not trust Luis Robert Jr. to stay healthy, so they want to deal him before opening day to get something for him rather than risk he does suffer another major injury, and now you're paying him $2 million to go away. Hence, two, even if you hold on to him, this is going to be his last year on the South Side. Either he's getting traded if he reclaims his value from 2023, or he's bought out if it's another injury-plagued, underperforming season, because you're just not paying him $20 million in 2026 for that. Three, Chris Getz does not understand Luis Robert Jr.'s market and is pretty much delusional in his asking price. And four, if that's the case, then roll the dice, Chris Getz. Hold on to Luis Robert Jr., take the gamble, and hope he gets back to his 2023 playing level and hope he actually plays more than 100 games. And actually, you only have to hope he stays healthy from April to July. And even then, April to June, don't keep him any longer than June, because again, and I've talked about this on previous episodes for those that are just parachuting in, this is it. Because the timelines just don't match up anymore with the club control. He's got 2 more years of club control left after this season and their club options. And if the Sox are theoretically going to be competitive by as soon as 2027, that's the last year of club control. And he's not signing an extension. He's represented by Scott Boras. So again, it's just 2 ships passing in the night. Or again, you're just not going to deal with the injury problems anymore, and you can get out for it for the low price of $2 million because that's his buyout, but you're just not going to get anything back. And after reading former Cubs beat reporter and now Reds beat writer Gordon Whitmire, what he revealed, and Gordon's a great guy, by the way. He may sound and act like a cantankerous guy, but he's probably one of the best people you'll ever meet. Anyways, you get a good insight into Getz just being unreasonable in his asking price for a player the entire league has basically said he's injury prone and he's a one-hit wonder. So yeah, you're going to take a fraction of the cost. And again, why this matters? Well, Whitmire has basically reported the Reds are done pursuing a trade for Luis Robert Jr., whereas the last report kind of gave a glimmer of a hope. I believe it was Jim Bowden who reported that, or was it Ken Rosenthal? One of the insiders reported that it could be revisited before opening day or could just be revisited by the trade deadline, but it sounds like it's done. The Reds are not interested anymore. And the Reds were an ideal team, probably behind the Seattle Mariners, for a team that could offer up a couple high potential bats that the Sox could use in their system. And I mentioned too the fraction of the cost because everydayers know I did an episode where Getz was on local sports talk station 670 The Score, saying that teams were only offering a fraction of his asking price. And Getz actually sounded insulted when in reality, it is the other team that should be. All these other teams, like what the Reds were about to share with you, if I were the Reds, I would be insulted. I'd be like, what? Again, he had one great season, and it was 2023 was a great season, and he is a very talented player. And even when he was battling injuries and only played 100 games for the White Sox, he still can impact the game defensively. And he did beat the Atlanta Braves basically by himself, but it was just one game. And it was just one time that you really saw that's the Luis Robert Jr. from 2023. That makeup doubleheader against Chris Sale, where he hits the home run, basically catches everything hit his way. And the bullpen did help him out because it was a bullpenning game. But otherwise, the losing looked like it traumatized him. And there were earlier reports that the Sox and Reds had talks about a deal, but it fell through because of the Sox wanting 2 top 5 prospects and the Reds only wanting to give up one of their top 5 prospects. Single A prospect, shortstop Edwin Arroyo. And that's a pretty decent, generous offer considering he's the Red Sox top positional prospect and he's also a top 100 prospect. And I get the Reds being willing to do that too, even if the Sox did have to pay some of Robert Jr.'s $15 million as what was being reported. And the other reason why it seems generous too, and why would they do that? Well, Arroyo is still in that sweet spot where you don't know what he'll be. That the sending out team, the Reds, can still feel comfortable being like, we can give up on him because we don't know what he's going to be. He's at single A. It's usually once they cross that threshold of double A that it's really hard to get those guys now because the economics say, hold on to young players. They're going to be cheaper, especially if hitting is so hard. If anybody can prove that they can even hit, I would even put the line at like 240, 250. You can say you're crazy. Look at how hard it is now to hit at the majors. If anybody can prove and has upside, yes, it makes sense now for even, teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers to hold on to these guys because they're cheap and they're young. But if they're still at single A, you don't know what they're going to be. They could get the double A and hit 190 and be absolutely awful. And then you got nothing for them. But the White Sox were asking for not just the number 4 or number 5 prospect, which are very appealing to me. They were asking for number 1 and number 2. Here are the other 2 names that were reported by Whitmire. The going nowhere rebuilding White Sox were willing to pay down some of the salary, but some of the prospect demands were non-starters, from packages that included the organization's top positional prospect, Arroyo, to demands for an elite pitching prospect, Chase Burns and Rhett Lauder, sources said. The demands weren't considered realistic for a player who, despite the ideal-looking fit for his Gold Glove fielding, all-star slugging talent, hit just .224 with a 6.457 OPS during a 2024 season limited 100 games by injuries. Robert makes $15 million this year with a $2 million buyout price on a 2026 club option. I mean, yeah, shoot your shot, Gets, but also know your audience. Know who you're talking to here, man. This is a small market team. While front offices don't normally reflect their fan base, it sounds to me like the Reds do kind of, and the Reds fan base on trade content, and I know this specifically because I've written trade content for the Southside Showdown, and I've done an episode where you get these Reds fans jumping in. They treat their prospects like sacred cows. I mean, good Lord. They treat and again, I get the argument, but on the flip side, we're talking about guys that are 21, 20 years old or 22 outside of Rhett Lauder who have not done anything professionally really yet. And they act like, oh my God, I can't give up Cam Collier. You don't know what Cam Collier is going to be. So that's the flip side. Stop. I guess that's my PSA to anybody. Stop acting like these prospects are sacred cows. Like the franchise will shut down if they are traded. And especially this is what Whitmire wrote in this blurb. Mostly if the White Sox, who didn't get real, and talks broke down last month over steep asking prices for an all-star talent with $17 million payroll commitment and a track record of injuries that has kept him from playing more than 100 games in all but one season. Okay. The White Sox didn't get real. And that's the only reason why it irks me. And again, I love Gordon, and I think he's a very talented writer and all that. But trades are always going to be viewed biasly, too. That's why. And especially if you want to talk about a fan base, and I'm not trying to throw shade at just my experience with Reds fans. When it comes to trades, especially their prospects, it's super biased. Didn't get real. If Getz wants that in a package, that's the price. Doesn't mean the Sox didn't get real because they actually think, to the White Sox, Luis Robert Jr. is very valuable. To every 29 on their team, he's not as valuable. But it doesn't mean they're not getting real. I mean, he's talking about a first-round pick who's not even barely. I don't even know if Chase Burns has gotten to the complex league. Reds fans, please correct me if I'm wrong. And I'll say that, yes, overvaluing, yes. Not getting real, come on. If that's the price, that's the price. Sorry. That's my other PSA. But I do believe in the unbiased, yes, Robert Jr. is overvalued because he provides a lot of value just to the White Sox. Every other team, they probably view him correctly. One hit wonder, always injured, probably does not like losing. and can pout if he does not like losing. And especially in the White Sox case, after LRJ is traded, they don't have much to offer to contenders to, help add premium prospects. This is their last premium asset, but it's so volatile. But I do get why the Reds would be offended, because I'm sure Getz liked Chase Burns, who was taken with the second pick in last year's draft. I mean, because it seems like they were zeroing in on pitching, although they probably wanted the left-hander and Hagen Smith. But if Burns was there, it'd be interesting to see who they would have taken. But Getz has got to realize this isn't the Boston Red Sox desperate enough to trade their most recent first-round pick just because they have to keep pace with the New York Yankees and the Baltimore Orioles. The Reds are dealing with fellow small market teams in the NL Central, plus the Cubs, who act like a small market team most of the time. Pretty much outside of the Kyle Tucker trade this offseason, they acted like a small market team. I mean, they signed Nicky Lopez and Colin Rea. Those were like some of their big moves that they made outside of the Kyle Tucker trade. They don't realize they are definitely the sleeping giant. So the Reds don't need to be desperate to be like, oh yeah, we need Luis Robert Jr. to keep pace with the Cubs. I mean, they're better off probably keeping Rhett Lauder, who has made 6 starts in the big leagues, looked good. And for the Reds, that's a foundational piece. And while you can never have enough pitching, your system really needs bats. And the Reds had 3 of them in Arroyo, Sal Stewart, and Cam Collier, who, like I said, they're in that sweet spot at single A where if you maybe would have shot there, you might have been able to do it. Even if you would have said, yeah, okay, I'll pay $10 million of Luis Robert Jr.'s $15 million salary next year. Because again, those are future, yes, they're at A ball and it's going to take a little bit, but they're future studs potentially on the flip side. They're just not sacred cows. But now that door's closed, and I guess I also bring that up because while I do applaud Getz for going big, you also have to be realistic and stop being hard to deal with. These details are getting released more and more that he keeps being hard to deal with. You had the Braves last year complain about the asking price for Dylan Cease. You had plenty of rejection for Garrett Crochet at last year's trade deadline too. Start understanding your value players do not have the value you think of to the 29 other teams and be like, oh, they're only offering me a fraction of the cost. That's because they are the fraction of the cost. If it's a high price, stop floating out their availability then to insiders and be like, well, we're still interested. No, just say this is the price. And if somebody comes up with a price, we'll trade him. And if not, he's still a part of the team. And, and just stop with the Sox would love to trade Luis Robert Jr. Make it clear you are rolling the dice and going with LRJ, having a healthy first half of the 2025 season, and then you're trading. And if he does get hurt, just look at the mitigant. There is a mitigant, and I always look for the mitigant. And that's my suggestion to anybody. I don't want to tell you how to fan, but I would suggest are there mitigants available? And the mitigant is at least you get one more player from that fail contention window off your roster, because there's nothing wrong with still wiping the slate clean. Speaking of failure, Miguel Vargas, and he failed with the Dodgers, so accept it, Vargas Bros. He did fail with them. If you were asked why the heck did the White Sox think they could turn him around if the best organization in baseball could not develop him, and I want to discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion. That's a B. Billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for a same-day coverage up to $5 million, no medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/lockedon. Go to SelectQuote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote, they shop and you save. I really do love that tagline. I'm glad SelectQuote is back as a sponsor of the show because I just love that. They shop, you save. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. Well, shout out to Keith510, and that's on our YouTube community page. Really appreciate your loyalty and your listening. I know you've been in the comments every now and again. He has this on the YouTube episode page during Friday's episode. If the Dodgers couldn't fix Vargas, why do the White Sox think they can fix him? Still trying to force a square peg in a round hole. And that's a great question. That's an outstanding question there, Keith. At the time of the three-team fleecing, three-team deadline deal that sent Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham to the Cardinals and Michael Kopech to the Dodgers and Vargas along with two scratch-off prospects, who had a broken leg. Chris Getz said this from Scott Merkin's write-up on MLB.com, quote, "I'd say fans are probably more familiar with him because he's been in the big leagues. He's one of the younger, brighter bats in our game, and the way he puts together at-bats, his zone awareness, his contact ability, his power potential. We're a team that ranks at the bottom offensively, and so our focus was to find bats through our acquisition process here at the trade deadline, and will continue," end quote. And if I remember correctly, Getz in the press conference that he gave, thought Vargas did not get much of a runway from the Dodgers, despite getting 400 at-bats, which, folks, that's pretty much a full season worth of at-bats. 400 just means you may have missed a month. That's a pretty decent runway. And PSA time, yes, Vargas was once a top 100 prospect, number 37 at one point. Yes, he could hit minor league pitching. So I get the appeal of him. But in 129 total games and 434 at-bats with the Dodgers, he had a 201, 294, 364 slash line. And he struggled to hit heat. Continuing my PSA, because I know people are going to jump in the comments here. Minor league heat, yeah, he's got great minor league numbers. Outstanding minor league numbers. But minor league heat and major league heat are way different in that big league pitchers usually have way more movement on their fastballs, and they have way more command. They can actually throw it to spots. A double-A pitcher, yeah, he's throwing 97 too, but he's throwing 97 all over the place. They're refining pitches, command. Triple-A pitching, again, they're not at the level of major league pitching. Some of them are, and being stashed as depth, but usually there's this thing called 4A players, and that's where Miguel Vargas might be. Now, on the flip side, back to finishing my PSA, I'm willing to give him one more shot. Okay, and I did a show on that. And in this context too, you and I are talking about the White Sox thinking they could develop a player that the Dodgers could not. Okay, so that's my PSA. To the Vargas bros too, you can even question the Dodgers' ability to develop bats since they just usually sign or trade for most of their lineup. And Dodger fans, if you're stumbling across that, that's okay. It is. You're doing what big boy franchises should. Keep going. But they've also developed bats. They developed catcher Will Smith, who's one of the best. Andy Paez had a solid rookie season. Michael Busch had a solid rookie season too with the Cubs, because the Dodgers just didn't have a spot for him. They had to practically give them away. So they've developed bats. They've traded away guys that have turned out to help teams. They usually don't help the White Sox, and usually it's because the White Sox go after pitchers. But, on the flip side, you could say, well, Diego Cartia, he was just released. He was once a top, I think 20 prospect. It was definitely a top 100 prospect, but you got to remember, he also had a bad back. But the Dodgers have a track record of developing players, or at least the perception they do, and they usually flip them for immediate help now players. So I get, if you're either side. So maybe that was the thought when you're talking about runway, Getz was thinking, because I could see you guys, on the Vargas Bros side saying he didn't get much of a long runway. 434 at bats is a season, basically, nearly 500. But the Dodgers are always in such win now mode. They can't really afford to give their prospects those, 2-year runways. And some players do need 2, maybe even sometimes 3 years to really get their bearings about them, because it is so hard to play Major League Baseball. He did get 81 games to prove he could be a starter in 2023. But again, just depends on how you look at it. For the Dodgers, that's probably enough time because they can't afford to see if he could have been the starting second baseman. But if you're a rock bottom team like the White Sox, you can give them a season or two. You just cannot have what you had in the second half of last season. You just can't, because that's not even a major league player then. But look at Lenine Sosa. Jury, I still think, is out on him, but you saw he was almost like Miguel Vargas. I think hitting like 100 in 2023, showed a little bit better in 2024. Maybe this is the year that he finally breaks through. Some guys need 2 or 3 seasons of failing at the big league to develop into an above replacement player. And again, I don't mean failing at big league players a slam. Just hitting is hard, and some guys do need a long runway. Like they need O'Hare and Atlanta's runway, the equivalent. And second base and outfield, clearly not his defensive spot. So maybe those errors mess with him too. Because ideally, I think he still should be a first baseman. I'm going to die on that hill because it's the one defensive position where you look at his metrics, like his defensive runs saved and his outs above average, and he actually produces there. Plus, he's 6'3", way taller than Andrew Vaughn. And Zips is projecting, if he gets 513 at-bats, he should be a 1.3 F4 player with a 235, 326, 397 slash line, and 15 home runs. Obviously not outstanding. Hey, that's what you need, but 1.3 F4 is definitely much better than the minus F4 player he was. Fangraphs, the Steamer, has the same F4 projection, but a 226, 325, 386 slash line, and 14 home runs and 492 at-bats. Now those, and I saw in the comments, somebody said, well, coaching and hitting. Well, they had Marcus Thames at the time. They did not have Ryan Fuller. They just, he got hired in the offseason. And the last developed viable hitting prospect that the Sox system produced is Gavin Sheets, and that's all you need to know about their hitting development lately. That's why, again, I think it was a great question. But maybe Getz had this vision that he was going to hire a director of hitting in the offseason. Maybe he also had this vision of getting a lot more technology. Because does anybody notice, if you go to White Sox Twitter, you're going to see, like, when these guys are batting, there's an iPad in front of them. And there's technology, and there's cameras, and they're assessing these things. All the things a modern team should have. Maybe he knew he would get that investment in the offseason, so just get the guy at the time. And I would like to think Will Venable is going to have an impact too, because he can at least say, yep, I've been there, know what it's like. Better than Pedro Grafal, who even said in the opening, like when he commented in Merkin's piece, he's like, well, I think he plays second. I think he plays right. I'll have to get with Chris. Even Grady Sizemore knew he should play third base. Let's try him there. The only thing is, remember, the Sox could have, though, had top 100 prospect Luke Keeschel. Hopefully I got the name right. From the Twins, because that was reported as the offer for Fetty. But the team was not willing to do business with a division rival. And again, why I bring that up, Keeschel was 21 last season. Vargas is 24. So you literally would have had more time and more minor league options because, again, you're out of options. This is it for Miguel Vargas, though. He's got to make the team and he's got to produce. I'm willing to give him one more shot, Vargas Bros. But I get what you see because he has the profile of a big league hitter. But if he can't catch up to heat, he will not be one, as that's his biggest weakness. When it comes to weakness, remember that was Colson Montgomery's problem down at AAA. But hey, started to show a little bit of signs of improvement in September. So maybe something might be able to happen with Vargas too. Well, when it comes to big leaguers, the Sox do have plenty of arms in their system who project to be MLB pitchers. I got 4 who are being overlooked in spring training that it wouldn't not surprise me if they made the opening day roster. And let's discuss that on today's Minor League Monday segment. And that's next on Locked On White Sox. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get it on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay, and I always maintain FanDuel's traditional spreads, money lines, and over-unders. They're fun to play, but if you want to win big, the futures parlays and props are the way to go. Plus, the app is easy to use, and you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. As everydayers have heard me say often, I hope the White Sox never invest too much money in the bullpen ever again. It was bad business in 2021, 2022, and 2023. It's one of the reasons the contention window got slammed shut so abruptly, because of the limited financial resources, going to an area where teams have proven you can find effective relievers off the free agent scrap heap, later rounds in the draft, waiver wire claims, and that left no money to address second base and right field, and that's how you get Josh Harrison and Elvis Andrus at second, or Nomar Mazara in right. So unless it's a closer, keep looking to the draft. Failed prospects on the waiver wire, Gus Farland, for example, or scrap heap free agents, because bullpen arms, their careers have volatile swings. They're always back and forth usually. And that's why I want to look at the 4 pitchers in camp that I can see making the opening day roster. These are prospects that basically I think have been overlooked. Jake Eder, he's fallen out of the team's top 30 prospects, but when I turned on Barron's games last season, it always seems like he was pitching. First of all, whenever I turned it on, and I did watch a lot of Birmingham Barons games, it seemed like he was always pitching. And yes, he was struggling with his command. But if his stuff is going right, he's got a 4-seamer, a change, a cutter, and a curve, and I think he can even mix in a slider that can get outs, and can get outs in some nasty style too. I just think it would be better if he sticks to like 3 pitches and is only asked to face the order once or just a few batters. And I think he could carve out a very good career. Plus, he's 26. And you have already lefties in the rotation, like for the future, in Hagen Smith as Noah Schultz, as they're being groomed for the ace spots. And again, there's only 5 spots, so they're being groomed to take up 2. And I don't think you're going to have 3 lefties in your rotation. And maybe the Sox do want to keep him stretched out for a starting rotation depth, as if Martin Perez is traded at the deadline, the Sox are going to need a southpaw, because it's likely Schultz and Smith are not getting called up this season. I mean, I'm not ruling out a chance. They say they're not really giving them a shot. They're being coy. But I'd say that the only way they're bringing them up this season is they are truly unhittable in the minors. It's a possibility. But, if not, Eder can get a crack at the rotation. However, as James Fox of FutureSox.net tweeted out over the weekend, the Sox are looking to move Jared Schuster back to the rotation. So maybe the thinking is, if you need a short-term lefty solution for August and September, you just go with Schuster, since he was an effective opener in a couple of the games that the Sox did a bullpen. You just build his arm back up to handle that inning load in AAA. Either way, if Schuster's going back to starter, that leaves just Fraser Ellard and Brandon Eisert to duke it out with veterans Cam Boozer and Tyler Gilbert for a lefty spot in the pen. So I wouldn't rule out Eder either. Juan Carrolla, whenever I saw him pitching in Barons games, he was just throwing strikes. He was impressive once he got promoted to Double-A Birmingham. He is the Sox 29th ranked prospect according to MLB Pipeline. He did post a 3.58 ERA in 7 starts. But again, the Sox have plenty of starters in their system. So they got to start looking at who could be future bullpen arms. And I think Carrolla can get there. He had 114 Ks between high A ball and Double-A ball. And I think, even the scouting report even predicts he would probably be a better reliever than a starter, as he does need to develop, the scouting report is saying he needs to develop a better third pitch than what he's using right now. And remember, the organization is not opposed to having pitchers make the leap from Double-A to the big leagues, especially since that park at AAA Charlotte is a bandbox. Peyton Polite would be another one then to make the leap, because he should be thanking his lucky stars. The Sox actually dropped the idea of making him a starter. The Sox former second-round pick in 2022 was dropped as a starting pitching prospect midway through last season. That's actually a good thing, as he thrived pitching out of the bullpen ever since. 1.8 ERA and 8 relief appearances for the Barons, looked good. And again, since the Sox blew 37 saves and 56 leads as a whole as a pitching staff, they need to use every avenue possible, and they should not have this we can't have a guy jump from Double-A to Triple-A. Trey Mago, again, that's the arm that I was surprised never got a call up in September, since he pitched so well in the minors and the Sox bullpen was so poor. He was a player that they got back in the Eloy Jimenez deal. 2.08 ERA for AAA Norfolk when he was in Baltimore system. Comes to Charlotte, has a 1.98 ERA. You post a sub 2 ERA, that's impressive, since the Knights Park is very hitter friendly. However, he's 27 at the end of March, so he might just be at this point a very good minor league pitcher whose stuff does not translate to the big leagues. But if you can get outs in Charlotte like he did, I would like to see if he can get outs in Chicago. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss if the Sox are going to regret missing out on some free agents they were reportedly tied to in the offseason. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the Sox crazy asking price from the Reds for Luis Robert Jr., the team thinking they can develop Miguel Vargas better than the Dodgers could, and the Minor League Monday Report. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.